Hi guys. So there were 6 things, according to the email that Professor Ramsey sent us, that need to be included in our presentation. Those things are our overall purpose, our 5 objectives, our 10 interview questions relating to those 5 objectives, our methodology to collect our information, our findings and results, and finally, our conclusions and analysis. So I've sort of reorganized the slideshow to make it a little bit more cohesive because that order doesn't really make sense for presenting, I feel like. So the way that I've organized it is our first slide, you'll see we have our main objectives, our main purpose, and then the 5 objectives relating back to that purchase. That's what our first speaker will speak about. Our second speaker will talk about the methodology that we use to collect our information, and then there will be a slide that will show our first objective, a sample question based on that objective, a sample answer off of that objective, and a graph relating back to the question that they asked. And so they'll present that entire thing. Then the next 2 speakers, speakers 3 and 4, will present each 2 other objectives, the sample question and answer to those objectives, and the graph corresponding. This way, it's a little bit more revealing to the audience. They know our objectives before we lay them all out. I feel like it makes a lot more sense this way. Of course, if you have feedback, if you feel like I should reorganize this, please let me know. So then those are speakers 3 and 4, and then finally the last speaker will just spend all of their time on our conclusions and analysis, because that should definitely be emphasized, and someone should spend a good deal of time on that. Sorry about that, I got a text message. So that's the overview of the slideshow. Let me show you what it looks like. So this is our first slide, which then fades into our title slide. And then we have our purpose. So speaker 1 will say, okay, this is our purpose, this is why we chose our purpose, and these are our 5 objectives. And the first speaker will speak about each of these objectives and how they relate back to our purpose. That will be the goal of the first speaker. That way we don't need to explain our objectives when we get to the next slides. So then the first speaker will be done, introduce the second speaker. Second speaker will speak about our methodology, and they'll say, okay, this is what we did first, and this is what we did second, and third, and fourth, and fifth, and this is why we chose to do our methodology this way, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Great. Then, okay, so you've seen our objectives and our purpose. Let's take a look at some of the data we got. So they'll say, so our first objective was to investigate relationships with family members on Facebook. So one of the questions that we asked in order to get to the bottom of our objective was, why do you share different information on Facebook with your family members rather than you do your friends? Well, we got a whole bunch of different answers for this, but one of the answers we got was, well, because I don't want my parents knowing what I'm doing all the time. And then this speaker will talk about why this is, how it affects interpersonal relationships, so on and so forth. And then they'll say, and this is some hard data that we got in terms of people that share information with their family members and people that don't share information with their family members. Great. So now, speaker 2 will hand off to speaker 3, who's going to talk about our second objective, to understand how general privacy affects others and their relationships on Facebook. They'll say, okay, this was a sample question we asked, this is why we asked it, this is a sample, this is an answer that we got, here's an example, and then they'll talk about, okay, blah, 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 interpersonal relationships, and here again is some hard data. Cool. That's our second objective. So then speaker 3 will continue and say our third objective, again, was to observe how individuals display information about their romantic relationships on Facebook. Again, here's a sample question. Why do you choose not to display that you're in a relationship? Here's why we asked it. Here's one of the answers that we got, because I don't want other girls to know that I've got a girlfriend, so on and so forth. This is how it affects interpersonal relationships, and here's a graph. Great. So that is speaker 3. They've covered objectives 2 and 3. Speaker 4 will cover our last 2 objectives, and that handoff will happen here. And so now we'll go into our fourth objective to determine what extent photos impact the way individuals will represent themselves on Facebook. We've got our question. Here's how it relates to interpersonal relationships, and here's the answer that we got. Blah, 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 talking, and then here is the hard data that we have. Cool. And then finally, our last objective, to study how social networking behaviors affect how people portray themselves on Facebook. And, you know, here we just asked some general questions about how people portray themselves on Facebook to get a little bit of finite information about this. And then we asked, why do you accept friend requests from people you don't know? To see, you know, how public people are on Facebook. And one of the answers we got was, who knows, I might end up liking them, and we might end up becoming real friends after the fact. And this was a trend that we found, blah, 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 blah. And here's the hard data to support that trend. Great. Speaker 4 is done, and we'll hand off to Speaker 5. And Speaker 5 will say, okay, you've seen all of this data, you've seen all of these objectives and these interview questions that we've gotten, and the findings that we've gotten from our interview questions. So now that you've seen our findings and you've seen our purpose and objectives, here's our analysis and conclusions. And there is one of our pieces of analysis. Again, this is just a template in here before we actually get our information. And then they'll spend the last speaker will spend their time talking about our conclusions and why we came to these conclusions. And that will be the end of our presentation. So I hope this was clear. If you guys have questions or feedback for me, please shoot me a text message or give me a call. My phone number is in the email that I sent you, or email me back and give me feedback that way. Deadlines. So this is due on Monday. So, and I need to, you know, get the actual data into our slideshow. So it would be fantastic if you guys could have your data put into the Google document, or if you could email that data to me by tomorrow evening at the latest. Preferably by tomorrow morning. That's Sunday morning. But by Sunday evening at the latest, so I can put it into the slideshow. Then, by Monday morning, I would say at about 11:30 or noon, we want to have our analysis taken care of so that I can then put that into the slideshow. And we also need to finish up all the other stuff that we have to do. I edited the abstract a little bit, and we need those other 2 lit reviews. I don't know who's working on that, but this is how we're looking so far. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Again, email me, call me if you have questions or feedback, and let's get this done. See you guys on Monday. Adios.